pleasure to be here at the ARC World Industry Forum in Orlando and talk a little bit about oil and gas industry trends. You know, I really enjoy talking about the industry that I've called home for the last 30 years. But before I say a few words about emerging trends in my industry, I'd like to provide some context about the role that the oil and gas industry plays in the world today and is likely to play in the future. You know, today the oil and gas industry fulfills an important role in the world stage, namely facilitating global economies through a significant investment of financial and human resources in order to provide the products that define our way of life today. Now, current estimates project that the global oil and gas industry will invest an average of $1.5 trillion a year on infrastructure between now and 2030. Now, $30 trillion over 20 years is a huge number. But to give you some sense of scale, $1.5 trillion a year is larger than the GNP of all but the 3 largest countries on the planet. It's also roughly equivalent to the gross national income of all the countries on Earth at the end of 2010. But the realities and magnitude of the infrastructure, operations, and volume of data necessary to support the energy needs of today's global economy are often difficult to comprehend and, quite frankly, often misunderstood. Despite its size, the oil and gas industry is still greatly impacted by the financial, industrial, and geopolitical ups and downs of the global economy. And it's no secret that the global economy is experiencing a period of unprecedented change. The volatility, magnitude of market fluctuations, and simultaneous occurrence of key events over the last several years has never been seen before at the global level. So to generations of economists, politicians, and frankly energy executives reliant on using the past as a guide to the future, we've pretty much been left with no point of reference to tell us where we're headed. Now, the combination and complexity of the factors that created the global recession make the long-term impact on geographies and sectors in the energy industry difficult to predict. However, the global energy demand is a helpful and fairly accurate proxy of what the future may look like. Now, 2 of the biggest drivers impacting global energy demand are population and economic growth, and both are expected to grow significantly over the next 40 years. Now, emerging economies in both the Middle East and Asia are responsible for some of the biggest percentage growths in these areas. Now, there are quite literally dozens of think tanks, consultancies, and corporate scenario planning groups out there modeling global demand. But even the most conservative of these prognosticators expect that the global energy demand is going to double by 2050. Now, given the step change in energy use, conventional forms of energy are going to struggle to keep pace with the demand increases. So the energy supply mix, that is the ratio of conventional oil and gas to renewables, nuclear, etc., will necessarily have to diversify. But no matter how you look at the numbers, and even assuming a significant technology breakthrough or 2, alternative energy supplies simply can't close the demand gap in the short and the mid-term. Now, this is largely due to the long lead time required to develop new forms of energy and achieve material presence in the global marketplace of more than 1%. So the world will continue to be dependent on fossil fuels for some time to come, and oil and gas will provide significantly more than 50% of the global energy demand for the next 20 years or so. Now, this continued presence on oil and gas within the energy mix will have significant impact on the environment, as it has already. Even the most conservative projections for increased global energy demand point to severe environmental stresses caused by high greenhouse gas emissions. Given the seriousness of these potential stresses, interventions are being planned which, among other things, will make carbon dioxide a useful commodity that is too valuable to dispose of as a gaseous waste. But this will take time and a lot of effort to plan and implement. And regardless of your politics or your personal views on global warming, momentum is building to put in place more stringent emission management programs, increased government regulation, and broader powers of intervention regarding emissions. The consequences of these changes will likely be one of the biggest factors impacting the oil and gas industry looking forward. Now, with the global economy, energy, demand, and environmental concerns as a backdrop, I'd like to now say a few words about some of the trends driving the industry today, and then provide a few comments on what these trends could mean in terms of applied technology and business systems. The first trend I'd like to talk about is the continuation of the challenging environment in the downstream, and that is refining and marketing. High refining margins of 5 years ago, combined with soaring demand for fuels products, drove a wave of new refining construction. Refinery overbuilding, combined with demand contraction due to the global recession, has produced a significant excess of refining capacity globally and a sharp downturn in margins. Further, mature markets like Western Europe and the U.S. have experienced significant demand contraction of conventionally produced transport fuels due to increased biofuels usage, increased electric mobility, and the effects of higher vehicle fuels efficiency. Refiners have responded by taking drastic actions of accelerating shutdowns, closing small, inefficient refining sites, and refocusing human and financial refining investments on fully integrated world-scale sites with high complexity. Significant efforts are being made to cut costs and expenses across the board, and non-essential maintenance is being deferred. Similarly, on the marketing side, marketing networks are being concentrated geographically and functionally, and non-core, low profitability marketing is being divested. Further, the increased commoditization of fuels and the rapid adoption of the hypermarket model, where almost anybody can sell fuel, basically there is almost no place to make a profit anymore in the marketing arena. Many integrated majors and regional players have divested their company-owned sites and marketing operations entirely in favor of a dealer or distributor model. Now, refiners and marketers are increasingly turning to technology to help reduce their costs and increase efficiency. Within the refinery gate, this means a much bigger ask in terms of production planning tools to optimize crude runs, reduce inventories and losses, and drive energy efficiency. Another key area of technology investment is creating tighter, adaptive, and more flexible links between refinery production and supply trading teams, minimizing unhedged price exposure. On the marketing side, dynamic pricing, similar to the way that airlines price seats, is being increasingly used to adjust prices in real time. And lastly, development of fully integrated crude-to-customer value chain solutions will optimize and maximize revenue from refinery to retail forecourt in real time. The second trend I'd like to talk about is the changing upstream direction of the integrated oil companies and independents, decreasing their dependence on the national oil companies. You know, in periods of high oil and gas prices, the major resource holders, that is, the countries with the oil and gas reserves, generally maximize their production to maximize revenue to fund domestic programs and their local economies. The national oil companies of these countries had insufficient technical resources to develop their own oil and gas reserves independently, so they partnered with the IOCs and independents to gain access to technology, project management, and financing in exchange for granting access to hydrocarbon. However, as prices increased over time, the NOCs became financially, strategically, and technologically independent, no longer needing to grant hydrocarbon access to the IOCs to develop their reserves. The only problem with this is, with global production from existing oil and gas fields declining at 4.5% annually, the IOCs were dependent on the NOC hydrocarbon access to achieve their publicly stated growth targets. This reduced access to resources made previous growth targets unachievable. So the IOCs and independents were therefore forced to refocus their efforts on areas of strength where they could differentiate technologically, areas where they could still gain new access to hydrocarbon, and by expanding production from legacy assets they already own. This includes very deep water, Arctic regions, unconventional oils from shale gas and oil sands, and crude and gas production with high sulfur and high metals. Now, development in these areas represents some of the costliest and toughest technological challenges now faced by the industry. Now, the technology implications for this shift are dramatic. Systems investments are being made all along the upstream value chain to maximize recovery from producing assets and to reduce above-ground risk. A few examples include applications and modeling to optimize hydrocarbon maturation, sophisticated applications to enhance well and basin development, and much wider application of remote closed-loop performance and maintenance management from producing wells. But the real long-term vision for these hard-to-produce assets is to create complete upstream value chain visibility from exploration to production in order to reduce direct unit operating cost, maximize production uptime, and anticipate problems before they occur. The next trend I'd like to talk about is the structure of global energy deals is changing significantly. While the national oil companies and sovereign wealth funds were hurt in the global financial crisis, their strength is now returning. And this is reinforcing their ability and aspiration to develop their own oil and gas reserves. And as such, many national oil companies are seeing strategic and economic benefit of doing bilateral deals with other NOCs without the involvement of IOCs or independents. Now, many government-to-government reciprocity deals are being done exchanging energy resources for other goods and services, often on the grounds of national security. Now, with development technology and expertise now available for purchase off the shelf from multiple sources and the significant increase in knock-to-knock deals, there are simply less opportunities for the IOCs and independents to participate in. That means major resource holders now typically get multiple development proposals for their resources. And as a result, IOCs and independents are now being forced to compete on a whole new level in order to be selected as the partner of choice by major resource holders for the privilege of partnering to develop key resources. So competitive differentiators for the IOCs and independents in the future put much greater emphasis on partnering models and relationship management skills. National oil companies are selecting development partners based on their willingness and ability to create value, share risk, be adaptive and flexible, and invest in long-term relationships. Now, in order to win these beauty contests, companies are making significant investments in business systems and information technology. And many IOCs and independents are building or enhancing capabilities that showcase their connectivity and collaboration skills. For example, one area of focus is building the capability to aggregate and share extremely large quantities of geographic and physical well and basin data from multiple sources. Another is being able to rapidly share and collaborate on field design data in real time on common platforms. Now, secure knowledge management and knowledge transfer programs are also a priority, as are online skilling and basic training. And lastly, basic business improvement programs and process efficiency programs which can be jointly accessed and collaboratively managed and leveraged are also on the increase. Now, the first three trends I talked about were primarily focused on operational performance, but I'd now like to say a few words about financial performance. Now, the push for players in the oil and gas industry to get their financial house in order may seem like a no-brainer, but for decades, many companies resisted making transformational changes, clinging to outdated business model, carrying excessive overheads, keeping functions in-house that could have much more easily been done outside by others.